intentions grow so fast.
This is Off the Record, a radio playlist where I help you discover new artists and new music. I'm here with indie bedroom pop artist Tom Caro to talk about his newest album, This Too Shall Pass. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to chat with you. I always love doing what I call across the world interviews because, my day's getting started, your day's kind of coming to an end. You blessed my ears like a week and a half ago when you sent over the album. And it's been so fun, like diving into the world of it. But before we jump into that, I'm really curious, who were your musical influences growing up? And I always like to like form it as not so much the artists you were discovering, but who was playing music around you and what do you remember them playing?
Yeah, great question. I think it was really complicated for me as a kid because everyone around me was playing such different music. So my mum was always playing like 80s club classics, Eurythmics and stuff like that, but also some jazz stuff. My dad was always listening to classics like singer-songwriter stuff, some Fleetwood Mac, and there was always the Beatles and Queen going on in my house. So really like strong foundations of songwriting. And then when I went to school, I kind of got surrounded by a group of people that were listening to a lot more electronic music and hip hop. So I remember the first hip hop I ever listened to was Eminem. And I just I'd never heard anything that sounded like that before.
Really?
And it was so interesting to kind of hear the differences between what I was hearing at home and then what I was discovering myself, and all the music you can hear through the internet. So for me, I think the influence I received was less a specific sound of one artist or another. It was more hearing why people make the choices they do when they make music. What do they want me to hear from it?
What got you into music production specifically?
It's a good question. I kind of sung in choirs a lot when I was a kid, and I was never like an amazing vocalist, I think, but I always enjoyed it, and I enjoyed being surrounded by music. Then I discovered my friend one day came over with his iPad, and he had GarageBand on there, and I was kind of like instantly, what is this? This is incredible. It was so cool and fun to play around with building all of these different sounds and making some really weird sounding stuff probably. But from there, I kind of got hooked on that opportunity to create a feeling, I guess I would say it.
Yeah.
Is how I describe it. I love music that you can almost picture something visually if you close your eyes of what it sounds like. It transports you to a place or gives you a feeling, and I think production is such an incredible tool to help do that, to craft like a world through sound. And so I just was hooked since then.
Well, that's kind of like a great segue into talking about This Too Shall Pass and like the production aspect of it. When we've chatted online, we've talked to each other about how simplistic the lyricism is, and it's matched with like this big production. Do you kind of want to dive a little bit into like what it was like putting that all together?
For sure. So I would say I'm a producer before I'm an artist, but starting off, from an indie perspective, I was writing all of these songs in my bedroom, and I'd imagine, when I wrote a song, I'd have someone in my mind that would be like, oh, this amazing artist that I like could sing on it, and this artist could play saxophone or whatever. And then it got to the point where I started trying to actually get into the industry and making these connections, and realized actually it might be a bit trickier than I thought. And so I said, might as well, if I have these songs as a producer, why don't I try and sing on them myself, just write some ideas down. And so because that was never my strength, or really I wasn't expecting to release them with my own vocals on them, I tried to do as little as possible to say as much as possible. So I tried to write lyrics that kind of felt more like a poem almost, less of a traditional pop melody hook style, and more what does this song feel like to me, and what words also represent that feeling. And so I kind of ended up with the project as it sounds now, and I thought, well, I'm here, I've come this far, I might as well try release it and and focus on the bits that work for me rather than trying to make it something it's not. And here we are.
That's so cool. I really love that. Like, it reminds me a lot of like kind of like Jack Antonoff energy. A lot of like the Bleachers work is work that wasn't intended to be Bleachers work. It's work that he just creates and nobody really wants to pick up and he rolls with. So that's really cool that it's like world building for you in that sense. Something that you mentioned to me was you pulled a lot of real world sounds into the soundscape of the project. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about where you pulled those from?
Definitely. I think it's so cool when I listen to music and I can't work out where a sound is coming from. I love that kind of sense of mystery of, and maybe this is just as a producer, but I'll listen to music and I'll try, and sometimes I'll even sit down and try and recreate the sound and figure out how did they make this. And I guess that meant that I also wanted to add in sounds that maybe weren't traditional instruments and take from the world around me, because there are so many amazing sounds that we hear all the time, but if you're not listening out for it, you might not notice it. So as an example, one of the songs, the penultimate one on the album, Ursa Major, there's this synth sound that kind of grows and shrinks throughout it, that with this massive reverb. And what that actually was there's this lovely kind of wooded area in North London called Highgate Wood. And I was walking there one day and opened a gate, and there was this kind of crazy rusty squeak of the gate as I opened it and shut it. And being the classic producer, I thought, oh my God, let me sample this. And I pulled out my phone and got a voice note. And that exact voice note that I recorded ended up being on the album. The sound you hear, just with extra editing onto it, is the original sound is still the same of this gate. And I think adding sounds and instruments like that don't necessarily come from the normal place you'd expect adds such a level of personality that you can't get otherwise. I think I like music that feels unique to you. You know, you can imagine it in your own life, in whatever circumstances it has meaning to you. And when there are sounds that feel quite specialized, I think it really helps with that.
That's so cool. As a producer and now as an artist, who are some other producers and artists you're drawing a lot of inspiration from?
Yeah, I think I had a real shift in my music where, like I mentioned, I was listening to a lot of electronic stuff and a lot of hip hop stuff. And then I had, through my girlfriend, actually, I discovered McGee.
Love McGee.
Yeah.
I have to stop. And I always, whenever somebody brings up McGee, I have to ask, what is your favorite song on Two Stars in a Dream Police?
Oh my God. That's like the most.
It's like the what is it like on a game show when they're like bing 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 bonus question.
Yeah. Am I going to win a car if I answer this correctly?
I mean, if it's in the budget.
I think I'm going to have to say Break the Spell. Yeah, there's something about, and you could probably hear it in some of my music, that like direct inspiration from that. The way that he manages to craft this song almost feels like you're like floating down a river of sound. I'm like being gently carried by this song, and it's so smooth. And the way that he introduces all of these textures, that each one is kind of unique and has its own sound, but they all work so well with each other. And I could fall asleep to that song, but in like the best way.
It's so full circle that you say that song, because I every month get a new like Fixation McGee song, and it just so happens that that's this month's Fixation song.
No way. Wow.
It's like the drone of it, like you said, that wash. And now that you bring it up, I totally can hear it in the project.
Right, that's so cool.
Were there any other artists and producers you were drawing from?
Yeah, really cool actually that we're doing this interview, because one of the most important artists to kind of informing the sound of this project is Gia, the brother and sister duo, who I actually discovered through you and through your Instagram.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I went over and listened to I think it was Takes first, from the extended version of Yes No Question, and I think I just shuffled on there on the album, and that was the first one that came up, and I was instantly like, this is incredible. I'd never heard anything kind of like it, in terms of I'd always heard people say that sometimes when someone you're related with, you harmonize with, you get special textures and your voice works in a special way that you can't get from other people. And I'd always thought, right, well, I'm not sure if that's true, but hearing it with these guys, it must be true, because there's something about the way that they work together on a song. It just sounds so incredible. Absolutely love it.
They're so cool, especially on their newest project. They just released a cover of A Couple Minutes by Olivia Dean, which is already an incredible song.
Of
And
course.
to take it and that's so cool that you discovered them throughout the record.
It was so cool. I mean, it's something so amazing about social media and music, and that places you would never I wasn't, you know, expecting to discover one of my new favorite artists, but just stumbled on the video on my Reels feed, and it just like hit me.
That's so cool. Well, what are you hoping audiences take away from this Too Shall Pass?
I was thinking about this actually from when you asked the question earlier. I think there's a lot of things that I put into the album that it would be cool if people take away from it. So partly with the name, the idea of this Too Shall Pass is this idea that nothing really is permanent. And at first, when I discovered that idea, I thought it was quite sad, actually, that, you know, nothing's going to last. But then the more I thought about it and it sat with me, it actually feels like a nice thing that, you know, if you're in a bad place, if things aren't going well, this too shall pass. You'll move on to better things soon. If you're in a good moment and things are going great, this too shall pass. So enjoy it whilst you have it and live in the present. And I think all of those themes and those ideas I tried to put into the song. So at the start, Within Your Mind, the second track, it's all about overthinking and being stuck in your head and letting anxiety control you. But as we move on through the song, we reach, you know, towards the end, Gone From Here, which is kind of accepting this idea that even if something feels safe and feels like a nice protective shade, maybe that's actually stopping you from getting the sunlight you need to grow. Maybe you should be gone from there. So I think the idea of growth and development and being present are all things that I would love for people to take from the album. But almost more importantly than that, if people have their own ideas and messages that they feel in their own life apply to it, then like, that's amazing. I love that. And that's definitely correct, you know. I think music is such an amazing tool to help us understand ourselves as much as what someone else is trying to tell you. And you'll listen to something and the lyrics will apply to something in your own life. And that helps you understand it better. So if people can do that by listening to this, then that makes me really happy.
It's so good. Well, it's time for my favorite question. I asked you to bring 3 songs from 3 other artists, and feel free to elaborate a little bit on why you picked these.
Great. Number 1, I mentioned it already, is Takes by Gia. If you haven't listened to this one yet, even if you know them, this is one of the bonus tracks on the extended version of their latest LP. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely go and listen to it. I think it's just like a perfect example of music doesn't necessarily have to have all of these really complicated aspects and loads of layers and crazy plot twists and stuff to be really impactful. It's just such a beautiful exercise in songwriting and performance, and it does just enough to be what it is without needing to do any more. So I think that's an amazing one. Who is a track called Something You Don't See by a band called Mileage. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I haven't heard of them.
Right. I discovered them recently. I don't know if you know Loving or Flight, 2 kind of quite similar indie bands.
Okay, yeah.
But they have this really lovely, warm and quite soft sound. The drums are very softly recorded and produced, and the vocals are super soft, almost like a Men I Trust track or something. And it has this really nice kind of feel good sound to it, I would say. I think it's a really good example of a group of musicians who have found what their sound is and what they're good at making, and, you know, what is unique to them, and just running with it and making it, you know, every song I hear from them gets better. So I really like them.
That's so cool.
And the final one, this is a little bit cheating because it's technically 2 songs, but it's an extended intro.
Yeah, okay. We'll take it.
It's an extended intro to the second one. So it's Quit Your Job, Run Away, and Caroline by Junior Mesa, who I think is LA based as well.
Yeah.
I talked to you about how I love music that, you know, feels cinematic and you can almost imagine a scene from a movie whilst you're listening to it. And I think this music is perfect for that. There's such a beautiful development of what feels like a really hopeful, kind of pure sound of the instruments and the song, and then quite sad and melancholy lyrics. And I think the contrast of those two works so well. I love songs with that, like "Hey Ya" by Outkast. You know, you're
Yeah.
vibing, having a great time, but secretly he's like putting you on game. Um, and with this one, with Junior Mesa, I think he does so good at, there's quiet and there's loud and there's sad and there's happy, and having one makes the other feel so much more real. I love that. So I wanted to include that as well.
That's so
Yeah.
good. Well, thank you so much for coming, Tom, for sharing those songs with me. And I really hope everyone enjoys the project. This too shall pass.